Okay, good evening, everybody. So you all saw my message. That's kind of where we're at. Obviously, just keep them in your prayers, and I don't imagine it won't be long. It's just not going to be long at all. And I can't tell you anything because I'm not God, but we're looking at a couple days. Yep. I'd be surprised if it's longer than that. But just like what all of our songs that we sang, we have hope. So she's actually in good shape right now. So closer to heaven than any of us are right now. Maybe. I mean, the day's not over yet, so we'll see what happens. Okay, so Revelation 6. So with the scroll, which is really important because the scroll you can't get to the inheritance without going through the seals. Do you remember that discussion from last week? You got to go through the seals first. And then there's only one person that's worthy to exercise this judgment and bring the saints home, and that's Jesus. He's the one that's executing judgment, God and Jesus. So he's breaking through the scrolls, and we get to the sixth seal and the seventh seal at the end of chapter 6, which actually begins in chapter 8. Is the seventh seal is broken. The seventh seal is broken. But in order to access the full scope of the inheritance, there's I guess a couple perspectives to look at it. This book is so infuriatingly difficult to understand, but there's like 3 movie scenes that are happening. There's like 3 scenes of the same time period. Scholars call it recapitulation, where these 3 movie scenes are in the same time period, but it's focusing on different aspects of the movie. So the seals is just maybe a brief overview biography of somebody's life. But then the trumpets is that same life, but focusing on a particular part of their life. And in that sense, we get Rome's partial judgment. But it's still the same period, as is the seals. Judgment's happening. And then you get the third movie scene, which is the bowls of wrath, which is indicative of the fuller sense of God's judgment. It's like the final movie scene. So same movie, different focus, different purpose. So that's something that's really important because it's not sequential. It's not now that we're done with the bowls, we move on to the trumpets. And now that we're done with the trumpets, we move on to the bowls. And the reason why we should believe this is because there's endings of the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls. They end with this great wrath and judgment, like the final judgment, the finality. And then in and around that closing moving scene is God's kind of saying, "What's up, y'all? I'm here. It's me." And that is demonstrated by the thunder, the lightning, the earthquake, the hail. And it's like, as you go through Revelation, it's just God stepping dramatically on the scene. I'm here. I'm here, and it gets more and more intense. We're going to go through the seals real quickly, and then I'll show you what I mean with all of that. I'll show you so you can have eyeballs on the text. And that will help you break up the book of Revelation to where it's less intimidating, seeing this as movie scenes. Same movie, different emphasis. Has anybody seen the movie Vantage Point at all? It's kind of an old movie. Or probably more appropriately, there was a movie on Netflix that I made Kennedy watch because it looked really cool about, they're in, like, I don't want to say the Situation Room, where there's a nuclear launch that's heading towards Chicago, and it shows you it following one character throughout that, and then it ends just as Chicago's about to blow up. And you're like, okay. And then it's in the middle of the movie. It cuts back to earlier in the movie following somebody else through that whole situation. And it gets you all the way up until the point Chicago's about to unleash. We may just need to have to watch it tonight on a Wednesday night. It'll really help you understand what John's doing. It's all building up to the Babylon's dead. But he already pronounces the final judgment at the end of 6, at the end of the trumpets in 11, and at the end of the bowls in 16. So you can't read it sequentially because you have the end coming in chapter 6, 11, and 16. Does that make any sense? Hopefully that helps Revelation become less intimidating, because that's all it is. It's telling the same story, the same judgment on Rome, and what the players are doing inside of that. What's going on, how God is executing judgment, but what's also happening to his people during that time. Okay? So, help maybe clears mud. Okay. So the seals is us breaking through to get to the inheritance. And that's where we're at, okay? So, boy, I'm afraid to ask for questions, but if you got them, let me know about any of that. Okay, let's just move forward with this, the seals. Now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the seals, the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures say with a voice like thunder, "Come." So, this is a invitation for John to access a heavenly vision, to see what's beyond the veil. Really, Revelation is, a lot of what Revelation is John revealing to us how God sees these things going down. What's happening in the totality of the cosmos with the dragon. Because on the ground, it just looks like an earthly empire just persecuting people. But what John does is he is invited up to see beyond the veil that there's something bigger going on. It's more than just Rome. It's Satan, the dragon, who's controlling Rome. So that's what a lot of Revelation is we're given this privileged access to how God sees the things that are going on. Come and look, and I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. Now, this seems like Jesus. He's on a white horse. In Revelation 19, Jesus is on a white horse. He is the person who also conquers. He has conquered. He has a crown. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that match up. But this could be just an image of powers going back and forth at one another. It's just a conquering narrative. And with that comes the second seal, the second horse, which is bright red, verse 4. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. So there's a term that Rome, they really boasted in it. It was called the Pax Romana, which is the peace of Rome. And they were known for bringing an order to the larger world because they had the army that there was no rivaling empires. Rome was it, well regulated. Roadway system was great. And nobody crossed them, and they brought prosperity, they brought culture, they brought economics. I mean, it was stable and that's what they boasted in. God says, nope, I got a horse that's going to shake things up for him. I got a horse for that. One's a conqueror, one makes war. Rome's about to get it. That's all this means. Nothing special about any of the imagery. We don't have to bog ourselves down and what does the bow mean? Who cares? It doesn't matter. He's conquering. With the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come," and I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. So don't think of the justice scales. Think of the scales by which people bartered and trade, economics. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures said, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. And do not harm the oil and wine." So a quart of wheat and 3 quarts of barley is on a day's wage isn't enough to take care of your family. So this is indicating famine is coming, scarcity. It's not enough to take care of your family. So it's not going to be, we're painting a dark picture of what's coming upon Rome, okay? So the fourth seal, I heard a voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come," and behold, it was a pale horse. And its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. And they were given authority over the fourth of the earth to kill with the sword and with the famine and with pestilence and by wild beasts of the earth. So you see this kind of progression. There's going to be the threat of conquering nations, and then there's going to be war within the empire, and then with war comes scarcity of resources sometimes, and with scarcity of resources come death. So you kind of see this building up. The four horses, John is getting this imagery from the book of Zechariah. And in the book of Zechariah, you can read about these horses in chapters 1 and 6. What these horsemen are, they're just God's eyes and ears on the earth. And they make things happen. Okay, that's really all this represents. We can get into Zechariah if you want. It's Zechariah 1, 10 through 11, chapter 6, verses 5 through 7. But in the context of those verses, God is sending his spirits, his angels, his horsemen out to patrol, to do things for him. That's what these spirits do, okay? Now I forget specifically what they're doing in Zechariah, but because I've studied it and since forgot, but it's how things go. But that's the imagery here. These are spirits that are doing God's bidding. So, and they have some of the similar colors in Zechariah as well. So, and I opened the fifth seal, and I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain on account of the word of God and for the witness that they bore. They cried out with a loud voice, "O sovereign Lord, holy and true." See, Jesus is called the Holy and True One, I think, over in in Revelation 19. I think he's also called that in chapter 1. How long before you will judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? See, it's those who dwell on the earth. Those are the bad guys. It's not everybody. It's the bad people. It's the bad people that are doing it, okay? What are the bad people doing in the book of Revelation? They have what? They have the mark of the beast, and they worship the image, right? They worship the image of the beast. We haven't got there yet, so I'm not expecting you, but we talked about it in our introduction. Then they were each given a white robe. I don't think I need to elaborate on that, do I? God's holy people, they have the white robes. Those in the presence of God, they have the white robes. And told to rest a little longer until the number of their fellow servants, their brothers, should be complete. No, there's not enough of you yet. Could you imagine? I mean, you're in heaven, but they're still showing concern. But, if you are who you say you are, why are you not doing anything about it? Habakkuk made the same comment, and he says that in Israel, there's a bunch of injustice and things going on, and he says, how long are you going to let this go on? Habakkuk says the exact same thing. And God says, I'm working up a plan, but if I told you, you wouldn't believe it. And then you end up finding out that it was the heathen nation of Babylon that God was bringing up against his own people. So sometimes God uses the people we least expect because justice is that important to him, even if it means it happening at his own people, because that's the level that God expects these things to happen. First with us. But anyways, you guys need to chill because there's more of you that are coming. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that. But we got to be patient. We just got to trust that God knows what he's doing. And death shouldn't be the thing that causes us to fear so much. Who were to be killed as they themselves had been. And we complain whenever McDonald's is out of chicken nuggets for the night. Anyway, perspective, I guess. And when he opened the sixth seal, this is the big one. This is where you start seeing this judgment language. This heavier, the finality of the judgment that's happening. It's going to happen here. It's described as the day of the Lord and the wrath of the Lamb. Maybe it's not described as the day of the Lord yet here. The great day of the wrath has come. Who can stand? I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth, and the full moon became like blood. The stars of the sky fell to the earth, as the fig tree sheds its winter fruit when shaken by a gale. The sky vanished, not that it disappeared, but like it rolled away like a scroll. And the reason why it's rolling away is because the clouds are parting for God to come down, which is terrifying image. And that's just all this celestial language. That's all it is. It's just for the sun to go black and for the moon to go blood red and all of these things happening, something crazy is going on. And for the skies to part, they're parting for something for someone huge, someone significant, and God's coming. He's coming. And as you can see God coming, what are they going to do? What are they doing? And the kings of the earth, the great ones, and the generals, and the rich, and the powerful, and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the caves and among rocks and mountains, calling on the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who is seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. So it's coming. It's like there's almost like a finality, like not God up in heaven passively doing things from behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Which happens in the book of Revelation coming up. God's orchestrating judgment, partial judgment. But here, this is a complete revelation of God's coming to take care of business. And then we have the close of one scene. And that's when I get really excited in the movie where I think that Chicago's going to get blown up by a nuclear weapon. And I'm like, oh my goodness, is it going to blow up? What's happening? And then it cuts. And it goes back. And it does it a couple more times in the movie. And I think Kennedy's about to be, she's over it. Because you essentially watch the same thing happen over and over. That's the book of Revelation. So it cuts right here. That's it. And you're like, okay. So, after this vision, I saw 4 angels wait, we're not going to go there yet. So I was going to show you kind of those markers of where the movie cuts and where the next one begins, okay? So that's one. You know, what I would do is I would either put a bracket between 12 through 17, or you can circle the last, you know, verse 17 if you want to circle it, and you can put end of movie 1 if you want. That's what I would do. That's if I had a pen, my special pen. I mark this with a special pen because if I spill water on it, it doesn't bleed. It just stays. The micron pens. Those are good to mark your Bible with, micron pens. But anyways, so let's look at, okay, so the trumpets start in chapter 8, verse 1, and then they end in chapter 11. Verse, really it's 15 through 19, so you can bracket that. If you want, but listen to the language. So this is the 7th trumpet. The elders, 24 elders who sit on their thrones before God, verse 16, fell on their faces and worshiped God, saying, "We give thanks to you, Lord God Almighty, who is, who was, for you have taken your great power and begun to reign. The nations raged, but your wrath came, and the time of the dead to be judged." You see that? The time of the dead to be judged? That only happens at the final day. You know what I mean? For rewarding your saints, the prophets, and those who fear your name, both great and small, and for destroying the destroyers of the earth. So it takes, okay, how can I put this? I was talking to my friends about this, trying to explain it. So the book of Revelation is written for them in their time, right? So they're going through a situation where the things that are working against them, Satan is using Rome to work against them uniquely in their context, what's going on. And then for them, God's going to judge them, and after that is their restoration. God took care of Rome. After that is God vindicates you by destroying Rome. So, but that's for them. This is a message for them, but the overall application of the book is for the Christians over in Nigeria, you can see how this book could strengthen them. Not that we have access to what's going on behind the scenes in this spiritual battle, but they can take the book of Revelation and say, I know God is going to judge these people, and even after, things for us will be our restoration. This doesn't only become something, it's a message for everybody, but it's a unique message for them. It's applicable. Because at the end, I mean, are we all going to participate in the things that are happening in chapters 21 and 22, where we have access, where we go to heaven, quote unquote? Chapters 21 and 22 is everybody enjoying heaven, right? I mean, that's something that we're all going to participate in, right? But for them, this is happening to Rome, and the next thing is heaven. Okay, does that make sense? So the application could be whatever anybody's going through in their season of life, being persecuted, God's going to take care of it and judge. The next thing is heaven. Does that make sense? That's the application of the book of Revelation for us today. It's not speculation about the end times. It's only for them back then, but it can be applicable to us today. That was really poor. I could probably give it another go, but I don't want to. Then, verse 19 of chapter 11, God's temple in heaven was opened. So after he makes judgment, the ark of his covenant was seen within his temple. And there were flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, earthquake, and heavy hail. So he keeps adding on it. And God says, see, it's me. Judgment and life has come. Because for them, judgment and life come pretty much at the same time. Does that make sense? You don't get to the inheritance unless you break through the scrolls. And once the scrolls are broken, judgment is done, and then you have inheritance. Does that make sense? So, I'm having a really hard time trying to get this across, but that ends movie 2. Right there. Then John kind of takes a break. It's like his arm got really tired of being the director for a little bit. And then he's like, oh no, I haven't really got to describe what's going on. Like, why is this happening? Sorry guys, why are you being persecuted? And why do you need to be faithful to the end? Well, there was a war that broke out in heaven over Jesus. And then, after Jesus died, there was still a thorn in Satan's side, and he decided to persecute the church. And then the beast, he's also a part of it. You know him as Rome. And then chapter 14 is this idea of, okay, well, who gets to prevail? Who gets to live? Who are the good guys and bad guys? Well, you know who the good guys are. It's the 144,000. I talked about them in chapter 7. Well, who are the bad guys? Well, it's these people that dwell on the earth, verse 6, chapter 14, verse 6. And then he picks back up. Now he's ready to start directing again in verse 16, or in chapter 16. He goes, okay, I got another vantage point. The movie stops, and then you kind of get like a backlog of who the people are and what's going on. Why is this movie happening in the first place? Okay, now let's do the final scene, so to speak. Let's do the final part of the movie. Let's have a resolve. That's chapter 16, where it's depicted as a fuller judgment. Then he does that for chapter 16, and who is it? Who is this person? Well, who's falling? It's the great prostitute, and we know them as chapter 18 Babylon, and everybody's all sad. And then, that's all taken care of. Okay, well, what's next? Now that they've been judged, there's an awesome scene. At the end, it's everybody is vindicated, everybody is alive and rejoicing and happy, and they get to participate in this awesome supper. amazing meal, and it's Jesus. And there's still some depiction of judgment even in that. And then we start moving on into the final scene of heaven. So movie 2 effectively ends verses 17 through 21. How do you know that? Verse 17 says, "It is done." It's done. And to cap off the scene, God steps onto the scene and he says, "And there were flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, and a great earthquake. As such, there has never been since man was on earth, so great was the earthquake." You see how intense that is? It's like God finally stepping up and saying, boom. It's over, guys. Sorry, Rome. Sorry. Chapter 17 and 18 just tell you who it is. Keeps telling you who it is. Okay? You see how Revelation, it just jumps all over the place, which is really hard for us to grasp, because how do we like to see things? One right after the other. We like things chronological. John's on ecstasy. I don't know what he's on. He's on some sort of drug. He just paints these pictures over and over. 3 different movies: seals, trumpets, and bowls.
So we may have gone over this. Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
So did John literally go up there, or was it a dream?
It's hard to say.
Because dreams are weird.
Yeah.
Brittany doesn't really remember his dreams, but I often do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to explain it, and then he's, just lost. But they don't, you're just kind of all over the place. So it kind of makes sense that if it was a dream, that it wouldn't be chronological, because he's here and then he's there.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes our dreams aren't one right after the other. They're just flashes of scenes.
Right.
And you're just like, only when you wake up, you're like, what was that about? There was no resolve there. You know what I mean? It's all over the place. So he was...
Then people ask you questions and you're like, no, I don't know.
Yeah. So the text says over and over that he was in the Spirit. So in Ezekiel, God takes Ezekiel and literally teleports him to scenes. This seems to be, the direction is up. Either it's a vision or a dream, whatever in the Spirit means. And I don't know if we were ever told exactly what that means, except that it's a revealing of something. God is revealing something to him. Here, go to 2 Corinthians. This may answer your issue. It just popped into my head. That was the Holy Spirit, by the way. I'm just kidding. That was a joke. That was a bad joke. I'm sorry. Go to 2 Corinthians. Paul he just feels the need to defend himself. And he doesn't want to come out and just tell them how great he is and validate his ministry. He doesn't want to have to do that. So he kind of masks it in some way, which when people are trying to brag about something or trying to validate themselves, they kind of sometimes talk around the issue to where they want you to acknowledge what they've done. This is exactly what Paul is doing. Chapter 12, I don't think I ever said that. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. I must go on boasting. Though there is nothing to be gained by it, I will go on to visions and revelations of the Lord. I know a guy in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. And I know this guy was caught up into paradise. Whether in the body or out of the body, I don't know, except God knows. And I heard things that cannot be told, which man may not utter. On behalf of this man, I will boast. But on my own behalf, I will not boast, except in my weakness. Okay? And he talks about, so to keep me from becoming conceit because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations. So he just told you he's having visions and things are being given to him by the Lord. And then he tells him basically, oh yeah, that's me. Like in the same breath. A thorn was given me in my flesh. So God has given him access to some of the most amazing things. But Paul has an issue, as a lot of people do. He has a pride issue, which is the reason why he's not trying to assert himself. Because what's going on in 2 Corinthians is people are trying to take the converts that Paul has worked really hard back into Judaism. And they're following these people who they think are awesome, that they're great people, that they have letters of recommendation. And Paul is like, oh my goodness, have I not taught you anything? And not only that, but chapter 12, he goes on to say in verse 12, the signs of a true apostle were performed among you with the utmost patience, with signs, wonders, and mighty works. I did a lot of things. They haven't done anything. I've worked signs and miracles and wonders. I have access to God's mind. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 2. I have access to the mind of God. But he knows that being in that unique position could make him arrogant. So what God does is he humbles people, which is the reason why I think God has given me this allergy. In all honesty, that's why I try to think about this. Because otherwise, I had been just very conceited. I didn't care about people. I had a lack of compassion. And now God forced me into a position where I'm seeing death daily. And not only that, but you're going to have a not so great life by what you eat. And what you do eat is going to stink. And by the way, Austin, there's people that got worse things going on than just your stupid little allergy. So I'm thinking to myself, now I don't have access to God. Is this really the case? But it makes me curious sometimes. I say all that to say this. Paul didn't know whether it was in the body or out of the body. He didn't know if he was in the body having access to these revelations or whether it was out of the body, like an out-of-body experience, like a state of ecstasy type of thing. He didn't know. It could be the case with John. That's a long story for a short answer. I could have just told you to read 2 Corinthians chapter 12, but what fun is that? 2 Corinthians is an awesome book. I know we went over it here recently. See, when I first came, you were in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. That's where you were. It's weird how my mind works. That's where we were at on Sundays. And then you've went through the rest of, and on. But anyways. Questions? Hopefully I did a 30,000-foot view of Revelation. And I marked the chapters where the movie ends, how you can tell the movie ends. There seems to be a finality of judgment and wrath marked by God's presence, of him stepping on the scene in a decisive way with thunders and rumblings and all that. Does that make sense? Those become little markers in the book. And that's why it's so important when you do Bible study to notice themes. Like, wait a second, I saw this back here. Hold on, could that mean something? And then you start broadening your scope and then you start massaging the text and whatnot. So, it takes a lot of practice because sometimes you just don't know what you're looking for. But if you notice themes and what this could possibly mean and you start connecting some dots, it really helps. It really helps. But it just takes practice. So otherwise, you're on a annual reading plan and you're at the end of Revelation. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm almost done, so I can just tell everybody I read the whole entire Bible. Well, whoop-de-doo. Tell me what the book of Revelation's about. I haven't read the whole entire Bible. I care about knowing the text and God and whatever I'm studying. And I just see it as future treasure to be found. That, and I'm pretty lazy about sticking to a daily reading plan. So, all right, questions. Let's round off with questions.
In the 6:3, you made a reference that the Romans pax something.
Yeah, Pax Romana.
Yeah, would you enlighten me there?
Yeah, so the Roman Empire, as it relates to that verse, or just the concept of Pax Romana?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Pax Romana is just the Roman piece. The empire where before the Roman Empire was Greece, and after Alexander the Great died, his territory was split into 4 kingdoms, and there was a lot of fighting back and forth, jockeying for land and whatnot, until Caesar came, and they established dominance in a major way, to the point where their influence, the Grecian culture actually stuck. They brought a lot of awesome culture, but Rome is what provided a lot of the roadways, the networking. That's what Rome brought, networking. And when you bring networking to an empire, kind of like networking for businesses, and we pay some pretty smart little young guys to, yeah. And once you get that, things start flowing. And you're going to put the people that help you network, you're going to keep them, they're going to have pretty big influence. So they established the network, one language, one culture. They just did it in a very good way. They're, say what you will about their execution system, but it was effective. Crucifixion was effective. It deterred a lot of crime. Maybe we take some note, but I don't know. But because of all of that, and then you have the empire or the emperor, and then him having kind of people that would, a yes man. You put a yes man in Judea. You put a yes man in other things, who, if there's even a whiff of usurping authority, they stomp that out to the ground, which is the reason why they crucified Jesus, because they can't have a smell of another king. And so that established peace everywhere. People, though there was some corruption, but overall, there was no constant fighting, no constant wars. It was a giant empire that introduced a huge network. And so as it relates to this verse in Revelation, that's something that they boasted about. It doesn't matter how great you are, there's somebody greater out there that can shake things up pretty bad, especially if you're hurting his people. If you're hurting his people, he ain't going to take too kindly to it. So that's what's going on here is, hey, I got a horse for that. Kind of like saying, I got a guy for that. I got a guy for that. And it's the war horse, the bright red war horse. So I don't know if I answered that effectively. There's a lot of good material out there on the Pax Romana, which is exactly what that entails. It'd be good to do a church history class and kind of but that's really outside my comfort zone. I don't know. I'm not really much of a historian, but it's good to. You take the history and it sheds light on in culture, it sheds light on the Bible a lot. So there's just so much we don't know about just things in general. I got really depressed listening to a podcast today. I drove a lot today. I went all the way to Eldo to see a patient, and then went all the way up to and I'm happy to do it. It's just I was in the car a lot more than usual. But the silver lining about that is that's where I do a lot of my studies. I listen to podcasts. And these two guys were just having a conversation. I mean, they know the languages and whatnot, and it was just nothing for them to grab everything from the Bible, and they just articulated it so beautifully, and their way with words and whatnot. I'm just like, there is so much I don't know. It's very humbling. But we got a lot of, and it's good. It's a lifelong task, mining some of these things to help liven up, like the book of Revelation, to liven that up. So And I've said everything a lot about how we know that that beast is Rome and the false prophet is the occult worship. And I'll tell you why we know that when we get there. We're just not there yet. Right now, they're just assertions. But when we get there, I'll show you how we know that. And the connection is the book of Daniel. That's really the simple answer. So, okay. Anything else? You're afraid to ask, aren't you? I understand. Comments about anything?
Paul may have talked about it there in chapter 12, 1 Corinthians, about him not wanting to boast or that he making it look like that was somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he may have learned that in the beginning of his missionary journey when he was at Lystra, you know, and then they saw him do miracles, and then everybody was like, "Oh man, you know, basically he's a god," you know, and they started sacrificing whatever, you know, to him. He realized, no, that ain't.
Yeah. This is Zeus, and my partner Barnabas is Hermes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
So he may have, you know, he doesn't want. He already has so much attention drawn to him.
Yeah.
Himself.
And I would say that he has a personality that would make a lot of that.
Yeah.
But God gives him this thorn in his side, whatever it is.
He was the leader of men before he ever became a Christian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and in Philippians 3, he talks about, you know, I could boast about a lot of things. I'm a Pharisee, tribe of Benjamin, and all these things. But yeah. Yeah, if you need Jesus through the gospel, if you need prayers of the church, you can come meet me right over here as we stand and sing the song of encouragement.